Hi, I'm Rene Ramos, and today I'm going to be talking to you about DreamWorks and Disney's negotiation deal. Now, this deal is pretty important for a lot of reasons, and I mainly chose it uh, as my main case study simply because DreamWorks has a sort of passion within me just for its animation films as well as some of its live action films. And Disney's somebody's been recently in the news for the whole Star Wars, uh, acquirement. So it was something that I was like, this would be a great time to kind of reflect on this deal and see different things. And hadn't really known any information about this, so I like learning about new things all the time. So this is really great, open refresher for me, just for the research perspective. Anyways, just a bit about the negotiation information. Um, Pretty much the deal was talking about like how many films will be covered within the contract length, and towards the end it was like 30 films over 5 years, which is a very very important aspect because that's a lot of movies, whether it be A-list films or B, C, or D films. That's irrelevant. It's just a lot of they're trying to get as many films underneath that 5 year belt. Not only that, they were trying to get a distribution channel, an outlet of sorts for the television market, similar to how Disney has a Disney Channel, and they also have Stars, which I did not know, and that was really really interesting. They were also talking about 10% margin. Uh, this 10% would cover all like the revenue expenses for their distribution fees. So 10% right off the top of the revenue from DreamWorks would be given to Disney in this type of deal. And later on in the finer print, they would go on to say they go maybe as low as 8%, but for the upfront talks initially, it was 10%, and that was a bigger cut than Universal, their prior partner, was talking with them about. And I'll get into that more later. Anyways, DreamWorks' position. Uh, Pretty much their position was they needed more money for startup costs. They needed a distribution outlet, and that's pretty much it. Was straight and to the T. They need this, and this is their position. They If they don't get this, then they're gonna have to lay off a lot of people, and some films won't make it out, or if at all, out the door. And it was a lot of different things that were going on that were just making this really really hard. And then we got Disney's position. Disney's position is a little bit unique in the sense that they're trying to revive an old studio. I believe it's Touchstone Pictures, and Touchstone is something that they started neglecting putting investment later on, and in the early 2000s, and it just wasn't seeing as much of revenue from that source, but they also weren't seeing that many losses either. Um, Also, they wanted the distribution source for DreamWorks films simply because that add a great partnership to them just because of their track record. And their position, the whole thing was, you know, DreamWorks is great. Our competitors trying to get after it. We can charge them a good fee for distribution fees, and they'll still take us simply because we kind of know what's on the table already from the media outlets. So we have a real upper hand, and our position is just try to uh, make them partner with us and be exclusive to us, so we don't have to worry about our rivals. Now, with DreamWorks' interest, it was kind of three things: distribution outlet, money, and kind of like the fees. The money and the outlet were self-explanatory. They needed enough startup money for a lot of their movies, and without that capital, they weren't going to be able to do a lot of the things they wanted to do. And then the outlet is just reaching out to an audience on the television platform. And at this time, that was a real big thing. Fees wise, they were trying to get similar to the Universal fees, which was I believe around 8%, which is pretty decent. I mean, obviously the starter talks we're talking about 10%. So that's a 2% difference, and it's a real big deal when you may not seem that big when you're thinking like a dollar amounts. Like, oh, $10 is it's not even going to be that big a deal. It's like, what was it, 20 cents or something, I believe, right? Yeah, 20 cents. And that's a dollar amount. That's a 2% dollar amount, and that doesn't seem like a big number. But when you start talking about like millions and millions of dollars, that 20 cents starts to add up quickly, and it'll just get out of control. But they're willing to do this if they can get the start money they need, which Universal was refusing to even negotiate with. Disney's interests were the rights for these videos. It's very important to own distribution rights, because then you can control who and what sees them and whatnot. The fees, of course, were in Disney's favor, so they were really interested to try to get as much as necessary to acquire the studio. And the overhead costs for Disney were very, very important, simply because, again, they were trying to revive an old studio, and just requiring DreamWorks films for this new studio would greatly increase their overhead. So, mutual benefits for this whole negotiation. Both sides will get money. I mean, you have a lot of different things going on, and the amount of films that are going to be covered, along with a lot of the different options that we're talking about with revenue. Both sides will get money, simply because they'll be playing on TV. All distribution channels will be met, and the startup costs will be met with this negotiation if it went through. Of course, the exposure from all this, Disney brand name is very, very, very strong. So, it's a household name. And of course, the rival loss, this is mainly for Disney side, because technically it applies to both sides, because Disney and DreamWorks were rivals in the really, really, really early days. But, they're coming back to Disney's side, and they're also stepping away from Universal, which is Disney's rival. So there's a lot of rival loss going on between all three companies. So it's really, really interesting to point out. Objective criteria. DreamWorks' track record of previous films included films like Tropic Thunder, which was really, really big box office smash. Of course, you have a lot of lesser films that just didn't make it. But, they wanted to look at the overall point of view. So they took out the track record and was like, over the course of this many years, their profit margin was pretty, pretty high. Then you have Reliance Big Entertainment, which was their pretty much financing company that was helping DreamWorks with the loan amount. And then, of course, you have the name drop of Spielberg. And, again, that's another household name, just like Disney and just like Universal. And that also proved to be a very, very big influence, because that's someone very important and big in the movie industry, and someone of great worth and value. And then you have affiliation. One word is the CEO of DreamWorks is Jeffrey Katzenberg, I believe his name. I'm pretty sure I butchered his last name. But he used to actually work for Disney, and that's their connection right there. And there was a lot of animosity, and just simply because of how he was let go. And this connection, he knows how they work, and vice versa, just because of the talks. So he knows what to avoid and what not to avoid. So it was a really, really good affiliation right there. Again, it could also create some negative emotions if you use the wrong way. The negotiation process, the good side of it, they got the money they needed to. On both sides, they got the fees as well for Disney's side. Universal lost DreamWorks to Disney. That's plain and simple. Universal wasn't really nice about it in the public media, but they pretty much, in layman's terms, it was kind of like if a conversation in the street happened and you're talking with somebody and they're trying to lowball you at every corner, and then you're just like, I need a way out. My back is against the wall. And you heard a friend of a friend who's also interested, so you talking to them, but there's nothing's official, and that just offends the first party, and that's pretty much what ended up happening. It just sounded like a big kids brawl that was just very, very unprofessional. And of course, there's potential profit in the future for both sides. As for the bad, the universal issues was not very good for public relations. I mean, that was a real big issue for both sides, and the more times the news media outlets quoted or misquoted them, it just became worse and worse. Of course, the fees were not directly into DreamWorks' favor in the beginning, but towards the end, it kind of evened out to where they wanted. But again, that's just a real big issue there that they had to deal with in order to get this upfront money. And of course, the track record on an individual movie basis was definitely not great. So if people were just not going to look at the overall course of like a few years, which is what the contract length was, it would have been extremely, extremely bad, which they did point out on an individual movie basis, but somebody had piped up. So that was a really, really good thing. End result, the deal was reached, and then both sides definitely benefited from this. The deal reached pretty much was $150 million loan from Disney for just the upfront costs, 8 to 10% distribution fees. It all depends on a lot of different things, but the fine details are not really published online. The length was going to be 5 years, and this was only really covering live action movies, which I found really, really interesting because DreamWorks is really known for its animation. And again, that's the same with Disney, when I found out that they also had Touchstone and a lot of different other companies for live action. And I'm only really familiar with a lot of current live action, which is like the Pirates of the Caribbean and different movies like that. So it's very, very interesting to find out all this information. Pretty much to wrap up everything, both sides got a really good deal out of this, simply because they were also in the media. They got the media coverage. They also got a lot of publicity. Both sides are going to benefit from this greatly. And as we're seeing even today, Disney is still a powerhouse. Such so that they just recently did the whole Star Wars thing, and of course, public relations over universal issues. That right there is both negative and positive. A lot of people like to say, as long as they're talking about you is good, and I'd have something different to say. Be like, yes, they're talking about you, but not in a good way, and you always want positive images reflected on your name. And Universal did not pretty much do that for themselves. References are as follows, and thank you for listening.